The screen was black. The room was cold. And the fate of an entire planet was decided in less than 3 minutes. No one on Earth knew. No one was asked. No one was warned. In a part of the galaxy that humans had never seen, in a room made of dark stone and cold light, 12 of the most powerful beings in the universe sat in a circle. They were the Galactic Council. They had existed for over 10,000 years. They had built empires, ended wars, and decided which civilizations lived and which ones disappeared forever. Today, they were deciding about Earth. The leader of the council was a tall, thin creature named Voss. His skin was gray like old stone. His eyes were completely white. And when he spoke, his voice was slow and deep. Like a rock falling into dark water, Voss placed a small device on the table. A blue light came from it. And there, floating above the table, was a small image. A planet round and blue, covered in clouds and oceans and green land. Earth. "This is the planet," Voss said quietly. "Sector 7, third position from its star, population 8 billion, species classification, human." He paused. "They are growing too fast." One of the other council members, a wide creature with 4 arms named Duel, leaned forward. "How fast?" 40 years ago, they had no technology beyond their own planet, Voss said. "Today, they have space stations. They are mining other planets in their system. And 3 months ago, one of their ships flew past the boundary line into deep space." The room went quiet. The boundary line was important. Every species knew the rule. Cross the boundary line, and the council takes notice. The humans had crossed it. "They did not know what the boundary was," said one council member, a small bird-like creature named Ello. "They are still a young species. They did not know." "That is exactly the problem," Voss said, his white eyes moving slowly around the table. "They did not know, and they still crossed it. They move without thinking. They build without asking. They grow without stopping." He placed both hands flat on the table. "This species, if left alone, will be dangerous to the entire galaxy within 200 years. Ello opened her mouth to speak again, but Voss had already raised his hand. "We vote." The vote took less than a minute. 10 hands went up. 2 did not. Ello kept her hands down, her small eyes sad and fixed on the blue planet floating above the table. The other council member who did not vote was named Zorath. Zorath was old even by council standards. His skin was dark blue. His body was covered in thin silver lines that glowed faintly, like old scars filled with light. He had been on the council for 3,000 years, and in all that time, he had never once broken a rule. But right now, sitting in that cold stone room, watching the blue planet slowly rotate above the table, he felt something he had not felt in a very long time, something close to shame. "The decision is made," Voss said. "We send the Veth." The Veth. Even the name made other aliens go quiet. The Veth were not soldiers. They were not an army. They were something worse. They were a fleet built for one purpose only: removal. They had been sent 47 times in the history of the Council, and 47 planets no longer existed. They did not fight wars. They did not accept surrender. They came, and then the planet was gone. That night, in the cold dark of space, a signal was sent. 300 Veth warships turned and began moving toward the edge of the galaxy, toward Sector 7, toward the small blue planet that did not even know it had been chosen. The journey would take 4 days. Zorath waited until the others had left the chamber. He sat alone in the dark room, staring at the space where the image of Earth had been. The blue light was gone now. The planet was just out there somewhere, alive, breathing, full of billions of creatures who were sleeping and eating and laughing and completely unaware. He thought about the vote. He thought about the 47 planets. He thought about a rule he had never broken in 3,000 years. Then he stood up, walked to a small hidden panel in the wall and opened it. Inside was a single communications device, old and small, the kind that was very hard to track. He picked it up. He typed one thing: a set of coordinates, a star map of the incoming Veth fleet, and one single word in the most basic communication code used across the galaxy: run. He sent it toward Earth. Then he put the device back, closed the panel and walked out of the room without looking back. 18 hours later, on Earth, at a deep space monitoring station in northern Canada, an alarm went off. Captain Roy Ellis was half asleep in his chair when the sound hit him. He sat up fast, knocking over a cold cup of coffee, and stared at his screen. Something had arrived, a signal from deep space further than any signal they had received before. "What is that?" he said, more to himself than anyone else. His team was already moving. 2 analysts sat down fast, their fingers flying across their keyboards. It took them 40 minutes to decode it. When the translation came up on screen, Ellis read it once. Then he read it again. The room was completely silent. The signal contained 2 things. First, a star map, detailed, clear, showing a fleet of ships, hundreds of them, moving in a straight line, and that straight line ended at one place, Earth. Second, one word, run. Ellis stood up slowly. His chair scraped back against the floor. He walked to the main screen and just stared at it. His mind was trying to understand what his eyes were seeing. 300 ships, moving toward Earth, arrival time, 72 hours. Behind him, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Park, spoke in a low voice. "Sir, our long-range sensors are confirming it. There is something out there, something big, and it is coming this way." Ellis did not answer right away. He looked at the screen for a long time. Then he looked at the small team around him. 12 people in a cold monitoring station in the middle of Canada, who had just discovered that the planet was going to be destroyed in 3 days. He picked up the direct line to the World Defense Command. "Get me the general," he said quietly. "Right now." He paused. "And tell him we are going to need every ship we have." Outside, the stars looked the same as always. Quiet, distant, beautiful. But somewhere out there, 300 cold warships were moving through the dark, and the clock had already started. The news did not stay secret for long, it never does. Within 6 hours of Ellis's call to the general, the information had moved from the World Defense Command to 12 world governments. Within 12 hours it had leaked to the press. And within 18 hours, every person on Earth with a phone or a screen knew the same terrible thing. Something was coming and it was going to destroy them all. The first reaction was panic. In cities across the world, people ran to stores and emptied the shelves. Roads filled with cars as people tried to drive away from the cities, away to mountains, to forests, to anywhere that felt safer. Phones stopped working because too many people were calling at the same time. In some places, people sat in the streets and cried. For the first few hours, it looked like the world was falling apart. But then, something happened. Something that the Galactic Council, watching from their cold stone room thousands of light years away, did not expect. The panic stopped. Not everywhere, not all at once, but slowly, like a fire running out of wood. The fear began to quiet down, and in its place came something else. Something harder. It started with a man named Director Chen. Chen was the head of the Global Space Engineering Division, a group of scientists and engineers who built and repaired Earth's small fleet of space vehicles. His office was in Beijing, on the 42nd floor of a glass building, and when the news came, he did not run. He did not call his family. He did not sit down and cry. He picked up his coffee, walked to his window, looked up at the sky for a long moment. Then he turned around and called every engineer in his division. "I need all of you at the station," he said. "Bring food, bring extra clothes. You are not going home for the next 72 hours. Nobody asked. Why? They already knew, all over the world. The same thing was happening. Pilots were called back to their ships. Weapons engineers were pulled out of their beds. Scientists who had spent years building space mining equipment suddenly found themselves in rooms with military commanders, talking about guns and armor and speed. The question was simple. What did Earth have that could fight? The answer was not good. Earth had 12 official military spacecraft, small, fast, and lightly armed, built more for defense than for war. They had never actually fought anything. Beyond that, there were about 200 other ships, cargo vessels, space station supply ships, deep mining machines, research craft, big and slow, and built to carry heavy loads, not to fight. A retired space commander named Admiral Vasquez looked at the list of available ships and was quiet for a long time. "This is what we have," she said. "Yes," said the officer next to her. She nodded slowly. "Then we use what we have." She picked up a pen and started writing. Meanwhile, far away in the cold dark of space, the Galactic Council was watching. They had small spy drones near Earth, invisible and silent, sending back images of everything that was happening on the planet below. Voss watched the feeds with mild interest, like a person watching insects build a small hill before a storm. Around him, other council members laughed. "Look at them," said Dool, his forearms crossed, watching the screen showing humans running around their small space stations with tools and cables. "They are putting weapons on cargo ships." "Mining machines," said another member, almost laughing. "They are putting guns on mining machines." The room filled with a low sound, the alien version of laughter. Even Voss allowed himself a small, thin smile. "The Veth will arrive in 48 hours, he said. "This will be over quickly." Only Zorath said nothing. He sat at the back of the room watching the same screen, but his face showed no smile, no laugh, nothing at all. He watched the humans moving fast, working hard, not giving up, and something moved in the back of his ancient mind. A small feeling he could not name. Back on Earth, Ellis had been given a new title. He was now commander of Earth's combined space defense fleet. It sounded very grand. In reality, it meant he was in charge of 212 ships. Most of them old, many of them damaged, none of them built for war. He walked through the main hangar of the orbital station, looking at the ships being loaded and armed. Engineers were welding gun mounts onto the sides of cargo vessels. Technicians were running power cables through ships that had never carried weapons before. Everywhere he looked, people were working without stopping, without complaining, without asking if it was possible. They were just doing it. A young engineer, barely 25 years old, ran up to him with a tablet. Her name tag said Patel. Her eyes were tired but sharp. "Commander," she said, "I have run the numbers 3 times. Our weapons can damage their smaller ships, but their main warships have energy shields. Our guns will not break through them." Ellis looked at the tablet, at the numbers, at the calculations. He was quiet for a moment. Then he looked up and said, "We won't aim at their shields." Patel blinked. "Sir?" But he had already moved on, walking down the line of ships, his hands behind his back, his eyes moving from ship to ship. Patel watched him go, then looked back down at her tablet. She did not understand what he meant. Not yet. With 20 hours left before the Veth arrived, Ellis called all his commanders together. They met in a large room on the orbital station, some in person, some on screens from ships across the solar system. They were pilots, engineers, old military officers, scientists, even 3 people who had spent most of their careers moving rocks through space. None of them were soldiers in the traditional sense. All of them had volunteered. Ellis stood at the front of the room. He did not have a long speech. He did not talk about glory or history. He looked at the people in front of him, tired, scared, determined. And he spoke simply. "They have bigger ships," he said. "They have better weapons. They have shields we cannot break from far away. They have more experience. They have fought 47 wars and won all 47. The room was very quiet. "We have one thing they do not have," he continued. "We have something they have never seen before, because no species they have ever fought has fought like us. We do not have a plan that makes sense on paper. We have a plan that only works if every one of you does exactly what I say, at exactly the right moment." He looked around the room. "Can I count on that?" No one spoke. Then, one by one, every person in the room nodded. The Veth fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system like a wall of dark metal rising from nothing. 300 ships, perfectly still, perfectly silent, arranged in a formation that had ended 47 worlds. A single message came through on all frequencies, in every Earth language, translated perfectly. The voice was flat and cold and without any feeling at all. "People of Earth, you have 1 hour to surrender your planet. After that, there will be nothing left to surrender. Ellis was sitting in the command chair of his ship when the message played. He listened to it all the way to the end. Then he was quiet for 3 seconds. Then he reached forward and pressed the comm button. His voice was calm, almost gentle when he spoke. All ships. A pause. Move out. In the council chamber, the laughter had stopped. Zorath leaned forward in his seat, and for the first time in 3,000 years he felt something like hope. No one in the galaxy had ever charged the Veth. Not once. In 47 wars, across 47 different worlds, the pattern had always been the same. The Veth arrived. The other side saw how many ships there were, and the other side either ran or surrendered. No species had ever looked at 300 Veth warships and decided to fly straight at them. Until now, the Veth commander's name was Kale-9. He was not a creature in the traditional sense. He was something between a machine and a living being. A tall, silver figure with no face, only a smooth plate of dark metal where a face should have been, and 2 narrow lights where eyes would be. He had commanded the Veth fleet for 600 years. He had never lost a battle. He had never been surprised. He was standing at the front of his command ship when the human fleet appeared on his screen. He looked at the numbers. 212 ships. He almost did not react. Primitive vessels, said one of his officers. Mostly cargo class. Some have added weapons. The weapons will not penetrate our shields. Kale-9 looked at the screen for a moment longer than necessary. Something was not right. He could not say what. He could not explain it. But in 600 years of war, he had learned to listen to that feeling. Formation hold, he said quietly. Wait for their move. Ellis's voice came through every ship at the same time. Remember the plan, he said. Do not stop. Do not slow down. Stay tight. Stay fast. And when I give the signal, you know what to do. 212 ships moved forward. They did not spread out. They did not form a long defensive line the way every other species had done. Instead, they moved in close groups, tight clusters of 10 and 15 ships, moving fast and low toward the Veth formation like arrows fired from different angles at the same time. In the council chamber, the mood had changed. The laughter from earlier was completely gone. Duel leaned forward, his forearms tense, watching the screen. What are they doing? He said slowly. Nobody answered. The Veth fired first. Of course they did. 300 Veth warships released their weapons at the same moment. A wall of light and energy moving across space toward the human fleet. 12 human ships were hit immediately and destroyed. Ellis felt his own ship shake from the edge of the blast wave. Warning lights came on across his console. His crew moved fast, quiet, professional. Keep moving, he said. The human ships did not stop. They did not scatter. They kept flying forward, directly into the fire, faster now, closing the distance between themselves and the Veth fleet at a speed that made Kale-9's officers look at each other in confusion. They are not stopping, one officer said. I can see that, said Kale-9. He watched the human ships coming, still in their tight clusters, still moving fast, and suddenly he understood what they were doing. They were getting close, too close. The Veth's main weapons were designed for long-range combat, massive guns that fired across great distances with terrible power. But at close range, very close range, those guns were too large, too slow to turn, too powerful to aim at small, fast targets without hitting their own ships. Ellis had known this. The young engineer Patel had given him the numbers. The Veth shields could not be broken from far away. But at close range, the Veth guns could not aim properly either. It was not a perfect plan. It was not even a safe plan. It was the only plan that gave them any chance at all. The human fleet hit the Veth formation like water hitting rocks. Ships went everywhere. Small human vessels shot through the gaps between Veth warships, spinning and turning and firing from angles that made no tactical sense by normal standards. A mining ship 3 times the weight of a human military vessel pushed directly into the side of a Veth destroyer and stayed there, its drill arms locked onto the hull, its crew firing weapons at point-blank range into the Veth ship's engine section. 2 Veth ships fired at a cluster of human vessels and hit each other instead. Kale-9 watched this happen and said nothing. His officers were shouting now. calling out positions, warning of collisions, trying to track 200 moving targets in a space that was suddenly very crowded and very loud. "Reorganize the formation," KL-9 said. "We cannot," said his officer. "The human ships are too close. If we move the formation, we will destroy our own vessels." KL-9 was silent. In space, the battle was chaos. Ellis's ship took a hit on the left side. A deep sound moved through the whole vessel, like the ship itself was in pain. The lights flickered. 3 stations on the bridge went dark. Someone behind Ellis shouted that the rear engine was gone. "One engine is enough," Ellis said. "Stay in the fight." He was bleeding from a cut on his head where he had hit the console during the blast. He wiped the blood away with the back of his hand and kept his eyes on the screen. Around him, his fleet was suffering. Ships were being destroyed. Some were badly damaged and falling out of formation. Each time Ellis looked at the fleet count on his screen, the number was smaller than before. But each time a human ship was destroyed, 3 or 4 Veth ships were damaged in return. Because the humans had something the Veth had never planned for. They did not fight like a military. They fought like people who had nothing to lose. A cargo pilot with 30 years of experience flying through asteroid fields used those same skills to fly through a gap between 2 Veth ships that should have been impossible to fit through, firing at both sides as he passed. A mining crew that had spent 10 years drilling through solid rock used their drill arms as weapons, tearing into Veth hull plating. A research ship with almost no weapons at all flew directly at a Veth command vessel and refused to move, blocking its guns and forcing it out of position. Every human ship was doing something unexpected, and unexpected was the one thing the Veth did not know how to handle. Back in the council chamber, no one was speaking. The room was completely still. Voss stood at the front, watching the battle screen, his white eyes moving slowly across the chaos. His long gray fingers pressed together in front of him. His face showed nothing, but his stillness showed everything. He had not expected this. Jules sat back in his chair, his forearms no longer crossed, now hanging loose at his sides. He was watching with his mouth slightly open, the way a person looks when they see something that does not match what their brain expects. And Zorath was leaning forward, both hands gripping the edge of the table, his silver lines glowing a little brighter than usual. His ancient eyes were fixed on the screen, watching a mining ship with a broken wing, still firing, still moving, still refusing to stop. He did not realize he was holding his breath. Then something happened that had never happened in 600 years of KL-9's life. He raised his hand, one simple gesture, and the Veth fleet stopped firing. The battle did not end. Human ships were still moving, still fighting, still refusing to quit. But the Veth guns went quiet, and in the sudden, strange silence of space, both sides seemed to pause. KL-9 stood at the front of his command ship, looking at the battle screen, at the human fleet, smaller now, damaged, broken in many places. Still there, still there. His officer spoke carefully. "Commander, your orders?" KL-9 did not answer right away. He was thinking. In 600 years, he had ended 47 worlds. He had faced armies twice the size of this one. He had fought species with better weapons and better ships and better training. He had never stood in front of a fleet that fought like this. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than usual. "Open a direct communication channel," he said, "to the human commander." His officer turned slowly. "Sir? You heard me?" In the council chamber, someone knocked over a glass. The sound was very loud in the silence. Voss turned to look at Zorath. Zorath was already looking back at him. Neither of them spoke. But both of them knew. Something had just changed. Something that could not be unchanged. Across the battle zone, on a damaged ship with one engine and a bleeding commander, a comm light blinked on. Ellis looked at it. Then he reached forward and pressed the button. The comm light blinked 3 times. Ellis looked at it. His bridge was half dark. Warning lights were still on across every console. The smell of burned wiring filled the air. Behind him, his crew worked quietly and quickly, sealing broken panels, rerouting power, keeping the ship alive with whatever they had left. He wiped the blood from his face one more time. Then he pressed the button. The screen in front of him flickered, and then KL-9 appeared. Ellis had seen many things in his life. He had seen storms on 3 different planets. He had seen a sun rise from orbit. He had seen his fleet destroyed piece by piece in the last few hours, but he had never seen anything like the figure now looking back at him from the screen. KL-9 was tall and silver and completely still. His face was a smooth, dark plate with two narrow lights for eyes. Those lights were fixed on Ellis with an intensity that felt like pressure, like being looked at by something that could see all the way through you. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then KL-9's voice came through, flat and cold and without any warmth at all. "You are the human commander." It was not a question. "I am," Ellis said. Another silence. KL-9 looked at him the way a person looks at something they have never seen before and are trying to understand slowly, carefully, from every angle. "I have fought 47 wars," KL-9 said. "I have faced armies with 10 times your numbers. I have faced species with weapons that could split moons. I have never—" He paused, and the pause felt very long. "Called a stop to a battle." Ellis said nothing. He waited. "You knew your weapons could not break our shields," KL-9 continued. "You knew many of your ships would be destroyed. You knew the numbers were against you in every possible way." He paused again. "Why did you still come?" Ellis looked at the screen for a moment. He thought about a lot of things in that moment. He thought about the 12 people he had lost in the first few seconds of the battle. He thought about the mining crew that had locked their drill arms onto a Veth destroyer and refused to let go. He thought about Patel, who had stayed on her station through every hit and every explosion, still running numbers, still finding new ways to help. He thought about 8 billion people on a blue planet below him, who had no idea how close everything had just come to ending. Then he spoke, quietly, simply, in the same voice he used when he was talking to his crew. "We don't fight because we think we will win," he said. "We fight because it is our home." The words were small. They were not dramatic. They were not a speech. They were just true. KL-9 was silent. The narrow lights of his eyes stayed fixed on Ellis, and for the first time in 600 years, KL-9 did not have an immediate response. He had heard many things in battle. He had heard species beg. He had heard them threaten. He had heard them make promises they could not keep. He had never heard anything this simple, this honest. The silence stretched out between them. On Ellis's bridge, no one moved. His crew had all stopped what they were doing. They were standing still, watching the screen, watching the silver figure on the other side who held the fate of their entire world in his hands. Ellis did not look away. He held KL-9's gaze through the screen, steady and calm, like a man who had already made peace with whatever came next. Finally, KL-9 spoke. "In 600 years, he said slowly, I have destroyed 47 worlds." Another pause, longer this time. "I have never once questioned an order from the council." Ellis waited. "I am questioning one now." The narrow lights dimmed slightly, then brightened again, almost like something moving behind them. "I withdraw my fleet," KL-9 said. "This mission is over." On Ellis's bridge, someone made a small sound, not a cheer, not a shout, just a small broken sound, the kind that comes out of a person when they have been holding everything inside for a very long time, and something finally releases. Lieutenant Park put both hands over her face. Patel, still at her station, put her head down on her console and stayed there. Ellis did not move. He kept looking at the screen as KL-9's image disappeared, and then the screen was just dark again, just black, just empty. He sat back slowly in his chair. Outside the broken windows of his ship, he could see the Veth fleet beginning to turn. 300 dark ships moving away from the solar system, growing smaller, becoming just points of light. And then nothing. He sat there for a long time, not speaking, just breathing. In the Galactic Council chamber, the silence was of a completely different kind. It was the silence of 11 very powerful beings who did not know what to say. Voss stood at the front of the room, his gray hands clasped behind his back, his white eyes fixed on the screen that now showed the Veth fleet retreating. In 10,000 years of Council history, the Veth had never retreated. Not once. Not from anything. Until a small blue planet with broken ships and no shields had made them stop, Duel stood up from his chair, his forearms moving in agitation. "This is impossible," he said. "Kyle 9 does not withdraw. The Veth do not withdraw. This has never—" "And yet," said a quiet voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned. Zorath was standing. He had not stood up in a council meeting in 200 years. He was old and slow, and when he rose from his chair it took effort, but he stood straight, his dark blue skin glowing softly with silver lines, his ancient eyes looking around the room with a steadiness that made everyone else go still. "And yet," he said again, "it has happened." He walked slowly to the front of the room, past Duel, past the other council members, until he was standing next to Voss. He looked at the screen showing Earth, still there, still blue, still turning slowly in the dark. "We voted to destroy this planet because we were afraid of what humans might become," he said. "We called them dangerous. We called them too fast, too unpredictable, too hard to control." He paused. "And today they proved us right." The room stirred. "They are dangerous," Zorath continued. "They are unpredictable. They are hard to control." He turned to face the room. "But not in the way we feared. They are dangerous because they do not give up. They are unpredictable because they find solutions no one else thinks of. They are hard to control because they fight for something real. Not power, not territory, not pride." He looked around the room one final time. "They fight for home." He let the words sit in the air. Then he said, "I am calling for a second vote." Voss looked at him for a long moment. Something moved across his gray face, something that was not quite an emotion but was close to one. He looked at the screen, at Earth, at the retreating Veth fleet, at everything that had happened in the last 72 hours. Then he nodded. "We vote." This time the vote was different. This time it was not 10 hands and 2 staying down. This time the hands went up one by one, slowly, carefully, like people making a decision they knew was important and wanted to get right. When it was done, Zorath counted 11 hands. Only 1 stayed down. Voss looked at his own hand, still raised, and something in his white eyes shifted very slightly, like a light changing behind glass. He lowered it. 12, 18 hours later, on Ellis's damaged ship, a comm light blinked. His crew was sleeping in shifts, eating whatever food was left, slowly repairing what could be repaired. The battle was over, but the work was not. There were wounded to care for, ships to recover, names to remember. Ellis was sitting alone in the command chair, a cup of cold coffee in his hand, staring at nothing in particular. When Park called out from her station, "Sir, incoming signal," she said. "It is from the Galactic Council." Ellis sat up. He put the coffee down, put it on screen. The message was not long. It was not an apology. It was not an explanation. It did not talk about the vote or the Veth or the 72 hours that had just passed. It was 4 words, 4 simple words on a black screen. "Earth, you are recognized." Ellis read them once. Then he leaned back in his chair. He closed his eyes. Outside, through the cracked window of his broken ship, the stars were exactly where they had always been, quiet and distant and beautiful, and the small blue planet below turned slowly in the light of its sun, completely unaware of how close it had come and how far it had just traveled. Ellis breathed in, breathed out, and for the first time in 72 hours, he smiled. 8 billion people went to sleep that night not knowing a single ship had moved, not knowing a single vote had been cast, not knowing that somewhere in the cold dark of space, an ancient council had looked at their small broken world and chosen, for the first time, to be afraid of something worth fearing.